The grand chamber floated in the void between stars. A massive station that had witnessed 12,000 years of galactic peace. Inside, 300 different species gathered in a space so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Translators hummed quietly as delegates from across the galaxy waited for the next presentation. Today, a new species had come to ask for membership in the Galactic Council. Ambassador Deho walked through the entrance with two companions behind. He was an older man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a simple black suit with no decorations except a small pin showing Earth from space. Behind him walked Hyunwoo, a military officer in a plain uniform with only a silver circle on his collar. Next to Hyunwoo was Mingi, scientist carrying a data tablet and nothing else. They walked to the center platform in complete silence. The chamber quieted as thousands of eyes, sensors, and energy fields focused on the three humans. Deho placed a small device on the podium and activated it. A hologram of Earth appeared above them, slowly rotating in blue and white and green. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Deho began, his voice steady and calm. Humanity comes before you today to request membership in this ancient assembly. We offer our knowledge, our friendship, and our commitment to the peace that has lasted for so long. Before he could continue, a sound rippled through the chamber. It started as a low rumble from the Valkyrie section, where crystalline beings refracted light in sharp angles. Then it spread to the Orthani delegation, massive creatures with 4 arms and stone-like skin. Within seconds, the entire chamber filled with laughter, clicks, whistles, and the various sounds of amusement from hundreds of species. A towering Valkyrie representative named Thren rose from his seat. His crystalline body caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber. 200 years, he said, his voice like chimes in wind. You have been in space for only 200 years, and you come here asking to stand beside civilizations that crossed the stars when your ancestors lived in caves. More laughter echoed through the chamber. An Orthoni delegate stood, her stone-like face somehow conveying contempt. We have records of your history, humans. You split the atom and immediately built weapons to destroy yourselves. You poisoned your own world. You fought wars over invisible lines on maps. And now you think you belong among us? Deho stood perfectly still. His face showed nothing. No anger, no shame, no reaction at all. Behind him, Hyunwoo's hands remained at his sides, relaxed and calm. Minji continued taking notes on her tablet, her fingers moving steadily across the screen. Chancellor Vex of the Dominion Collective rose from the highest platform. He was a being of pure energy contained in a geometric field. His voice boomed across the chamber without need for translation. The Council has seen species like yours before. The Pharaoh came to us with similar pride. They, too, had just discovered faster-than-light travel. They, too, thought themselves ready for the greater galaxy. Vex paused, letting silence fill the space. The Pharaoh are extinct now. They destroyed their own homeworld in nuclear fire before they could even establish a second colony. We do not mock you out of cruelty, humans. We mock you because you are children playing with matches in a room full of explosives. You are not ready. You may never be ready. The chamber erupted in agreement. Delegates made sounds of approval in 100 different ways. Some banged appendages against their seats. Others released bursts of light or scent. The message was clear and unanimous. Deho waited for the noise to fade. When he spoke again, his voice remained level and quiet. We understand the Council's concerns. If we may present our case, there is no case to present, Thren interrupted. The vote is already decided. Those in favor of denying humanity's petition? Every single delegate signaled agreement. 300 species, speaking as one unified voice. The rejection was total and absolute. Furthermore, Chancellor Vex continued, humanity must withdraw from all contested border systems within one standard cycle. Your presence in those regions violates the territorial agreements of established council members. You will leave, or you will be removed. Deho nodded once, slowly. He reached forward and deactivated the hologram of Earth. The blue and white planet faded away. He picked up his small device and placed it carefully in his pocket. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, Hyunwoo and Minji following behind him. Not one of them spoke. Not one of them protested. Not one of them showed any emotion at all. This silence bothered some of the observers more than anger would have. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, watching the three humans walk away with perfect calm. It seemed wrong somehow, this complete lack of response. Most rejected species argued or begged or made threats. Some left in tears. Others shouted defiance. But these humans simply walked away in absolute silence. The chamber doors closed behind them. For a brief moment, an odd quiet filled the massive space. Then, Chancellor Vex spoke again, and the council moved on to other matters. They discussed trade routes and mining rights and a dozen other issues of galactic importance. The human petition was forgotten almost immediately. Just another rejected application from a primitive species that had reached too far. Too fast. In the docking bay, Daeho and his companions boarded their small shuttle without speaking. The crew asked no questions. The engines powered up quietly, and the shuttle detached from the station. As they pulled away, Daeho finally looked at Hyunwoo and Minji. "Send the message," he said softly. "Tell Earth that diplomacy has failed. Tell them the Council has made their choice. Tell them it is time for planned silence." Hyunwoo activated his communication device and sent an encrypted message that would take 3 days to reach. Earth Minji made one final note in her tablet and then closed it. The shuttle turned toward home and behind them. The council continued their session, laughing at the primitive humans, who had dared to think themselves worthy. None of them noticed that the humans had never once asked for mercy. None of them wondered why a species facing rejection remained so perfectly, utterly calm. None of them thought to ask what a silent people might do when words failed them. The chamber floated in the void between stars. And in that void, humanity began to move. 3 months passed since the Council rejected humanity. At first, the galaxy noticed nothing unusual. Human ships continued their normal operations. Human colonies maintained regular communications. Everything seemed normal. But slowly, quietly, things began to change. On Keshra Station, a massive trading hub that floated in neutral space between 3 different territories, Yuna packed the last items from her office. She had worked there for 5 years, building trade relationships with dozens of species. Her small office overlooked the main docking bay, where ships from across the galaxy came and went, like insects around a hive. Her business partner, Velkari named Thes, entered without knocking. His crystalline body reflected the light from the viewport, throwing colored patterns across the walls. "Yuna, what are you doing?" "We have 3 contracts to finalize this week. The Orthani shipment arrives tomorrow." Yuna closed her bag and looked at him. "I am leaving, Thes. All humans are leaving." "Leaving? Why? Because of the council vote?" Thes made a sound like breaking glass, his species' version of laughter. "That was politics. It does not affect trade. Your people were foolish to apply so early, but business continues as always. We were asked to leave the contested systems. So we are leaving." Yuna lifted her bag and walked toward the door. Thes moved to block her path. "You are overreacting. The council makes these decisions all the time. Give it a few years, apply again, maybe you will be accepted. There is no reason to abandon profitable partnerships." Yuna looked at him with calm eyes. "We were asked to leave. So we are leaving." She repeated the exact same words in the exact same tone. Something about her voice made Thes step aside. He watched her walk down the corridor toward the docking bay, and a strange feeling settled in his crystalline core. It was not fear exactly, more like the feeling before a storm, when the air pressure changes and animals go quiet. He shook the feeling away and returned to his office. Humans were simply too emotional, he decided. They would come back when they needed money, but they did not come back. Over the next 2 weeks, every human on Keshra Station departed. The trading offices closed. The human quarter emptied. Ships left, and none returned. Other species quickly filled the empty spaces, happy to take over profitable routes that humans abandoned. The transition seemed smooth and easy in the outer reach, a region of space where young stars burned hot and bright. Captain Jawan commanded the research vessel, Quiet Dawn. Her ship carried 40 scientists and technicians studying the formation of planetary systems. They had been out there for 8 months, the longest deep space mission humanity had ever attempted. The research was going well. They discovered 3 new types of stellar phenomena and mapped 17 systems in detail. Then the recall order came. Jiwan read it 3 times, her face showing nothing. She called her senior staff to the bridge. "We are going home. Begin packing all equipment. We leave in 48 hours. Her chief scientist, a man named Quan, stared at her. 48 hours? Captain, we have experiments running that will take 3 weeks to complete. We have data cores that need another month of observation. We cannot just leave. We can. We will. Begin packing." Giwan's voice left no room for argument. "What happened?" Quan asked. Jiwan looked at him for a long moment. "We were asked to leave. So we are leaving." The crew worked through the next 2 days in confused silence. They loaded equipment they had spent months setting up. They abandoned research stations that cost billions to establish. As they prepared to depart, an Orthani patrol ship approached and hailed them. "Human vessel, Quiet Dawn. This is Orthani Defense Patrol 7. We are conducting routine inspections in this sector. State your purpose and intentions." Giwan answered calmly. "This is Captain Jiwan of the Quiet Dawn. We are departing this region in compliance with Galactic Council directives. We will be gone within the hour." "Departing? Why?" "Your research permit is valid for another 4 months. We were asked to leave contested systems. So we are leaving." The Orthani patrol officer found this response strange but could think of no reason to stop them. The human ship powered up its engines and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Heading toward Earth, the Orthani officer filed a report noting the odd behavior but marked it as low priority. Humans were probably just embarrassed about their rejection, he thought, on Earth. In a bunker deep beneath Geneva, Fleet Admiral Taiwan sat at the head of a long table. Around him sat 30 people. The highest military commanders from every nation on Earth. The meeting had been running for 17 hours. Coffee cups and water bottles covered the table. The people looked tired, but their eyes remained sharp and focused. "Confirm the withdrawal timeline," Taiwan said, his voice rough from hours of talking. A woman pulled up data on the main screen. "All civilian personnel will be back within 6 weeks. Military assets are already repositioning. The last ship will cross into Sol System in 73 days. Communication blackout? Complete as of this morning. All channels to external parties are now automated responses only. Internal networks are fully encrypted using the new quantum protocols. Council monitoring systems cannot break it. Fleet status." A younger officer stood. "All vessels are operational. The new drive systems passed final tests yesterday. We are ready when you give the order." Awan nodded slowly. He looked around the table at faces from China, Brazil, Nigeria, Korea, Canada, India, and a dozen other nations. Humanity had spent 2 centuries learning to work together. 2 centuries building something new. 2 centuries preparing for a galaxy that might not welcome them peacefully. "They think we are weak," Taiwan said quietly. "They think our silence is fear. They think we are going home to hide and cry." Stood up, placing both hands flat on the table. "Let them think that. When we are ready, we will show them what silence really means." The meeting ended. Orders went out through encrypted channels. On military bases across Earth and Mars and the Jupiter moons, personnel began preparations that had been planned for decades. Ships moved into formation. Weapons systems came online. Training exercises intensified. But all of it happened quietly, invisibly, behind layers of security that the Council had dismissed as primitive, back on Keshra Station. Thes tried to contact Yuna one more time. The communication system returned an automated message. Humanity has withdrawn from external sectors as requested. Further communication is unnecessary. This message will repeat. He tried again the next day and got the same message. In the next week, and the month after that, every attempt to contact any human outside of Sol System returned the same automated response. The silence was complete and absolute. Other species began to notice. Human goods stopped appearing in markets. Human ships vanished from trade routes. Human voices disappeared from communication networks. It was as if humanity had simply turned off and gone dark. Some species celebrated. "The primitive humans have gone home," Chancellor Vex announced in a public address. "They have wisely chosen survival over pride. Perhaps in a few centuries, they will have matured enough to join us." Others felt less certain. The Valkyrie intelligence services noticed that human encryption had become impossible to break. The Orthani military noted that every human ship had left their space without argument or delay, which seemed too organized, too efficient. A few analysts filed reports suggesting that humanity might be preparing for something. These reports were ignored. The Council had more important matters to handle: trade disputes between the Valkyrie and the Dominion Collective, territorial arguments in the frontier regions, pirates raiding shipping lanes near the Verac Nebula. Humanity was forgotten, just another failed application from a species that had reached too far. Too fast, in the silence, humanity moved. Ships launched that no one saw. Technology activated that no one expected. Messages passed between military commanders using quantum entanglement that no council member even knew existed. Earth's orbital space filled with construction projects that happened behind sensor screens and false readings, and in Geneva. Admiral Taiwan looked at star maps showing council space, noting every station, every patrol route, every military installation. He had been a student of military history before becoming a soldier. He knew that the most devastating attacks in human history always began the same way: with silence, with patience. With careful preparation, the Council had laughed at humanity. They had called humans children playing with fire. They had dismissed Earth as primitive and emotional and weak. Soon, very soon, humanity would teach them a lesson about silence. About what happens when a peaceful species is forced to remember war. About the difference between cannot and will not. The galaxy continued its business, unaware that in the quiet spaces between the stars, something was coming. Something that moved without sound. Something that struck without warning. Something that had learned over 10,000 years of human history that sometimes the most powerful weapon is patience. The silence spread, and in that silence, humanity prepared. 6 months after humanity left the council chambers in silence, something impossible happened on the edge of the Verac Nebula. The nebula was a massive cloud of gas and dust where young stars were born. A region so full of radiation and energy that sensors barely worked. The Orthani Empire maintained listening posts along its border to monitor for pirates and smugglers who used the nebula as a hiding place outpost. Sigma-7 sat on a small asteroid at the nebula's edge. 200 Orthani military personnel staffed the station, monitoring sensor grids that stretched across 100 cubic light-years. It was boring work, but important work. The outpost had operated continuously for 60 years without incident. Then it went silent. Commander Vesh received the alert on his flagship 3 systems away. At first, he assumed a technical malfunction. Equipment failed sometimes in the harsh environment near the nebula. He sent a standard maintenance request and continued with his patrol. When the outpost remained silent after 6 hours, he began to worry. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We are going to Sigma-7. 15 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the outpost 12 hours later. Vesh expected to find a damaged station, or maybe evidence of a pirate attack. What he found was far stranger. The outpost looked completely normal. Its lights were on. Its hull showed no damage. No debris floated nearby. No signs of weapons, fire, or explosions. The station sat there in the darkness, looking exactly as it always had, except for one thing. It was completely empty. "This makes no sense," Vesh's tactical officer said, studying the sensor readings. "Life support is running. Power is at full capacity. But there are no life signs." "Not one." Vesh ordered a boarding team to investigate. 20 soldiers in combat armor entered the station carefully, weapons ready. They found nothing. Crew quarters were neat and organized. The command center showed no signs of struggle. Personal belongings remained in lockers. Food sat half-eaten in the mess hall. 200 people had simply vanished. Commander. The tactical officer's voice came over the communication channel, tense and worried. I am detecting something. Multiple contacts. Bearing 372, range 200,000 kilometers. They're in the nebula's shadow, using the ionization to hide their signatures. Vesh pulled up the sensor display. His four eyes widened as the computer counted the contacts. 36 vessels. Ships that matched no pattern in any database. Ships that were running completely silent, producing almost no heat signature. No radiation, no electromagnetic noise. They sat there in the darkness like ghosts. Hail them, Vesh ordered. The communication officer tried. No response. She tried again on different frequencies. Still nothing. Then, after a full minute of silence, a single message came through. It was not in words. It was a data packet containing two pieces of information, a timestamp and coordinates. The timestamp matched the exact moment when the Galactic Council voted to expel humanity. The coordinates pointed to the council chambers. Commander, what does it mean? The tactical officer asked. Vesh stared at the message. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. It means they remember. All stations, battle formation. Prepare for combat. The 15 Orthani warships moved into attack positions, their weapon systems powering up. The Orthani were known across the galaxy as one of the finest military forces. Their ships were fast, their weapons powerful, their tactics proven through centuries of experience. Vesh had commanded fleets through 3 different conflicts and never lost a battle. The human ships did not move. They sat there in the shadow of the nebula, silent and waiting. Vesh tried hailing them again. No response. He gave his fleet the order to lock weapons. The moment his ships activated their targeting systems, the human vessels moved, but they did not move like any ships Vesh had ever seen. There was no thrust plume, no reaction mass, no energy signature. They simply accelerated to impossible speeds with no visible means of propulsion. One moment they were 200,000 kilometers away. 4 seconds later, they were among his fleet. The lead human ship, sleek and dark like a knife blade, appeared directly in front of Vesh's flagship. It was smaller than his warship, maybe a quarter of the mass, but it moved with perfect precision. Before Vesh could give the order to fire, something hit his ship. Not a missile. Not a beam weapon. Something else. Every weapon system on his flagship went dead. Power cut out. Life support remained active, but nothing else worked. Across his fleet, the same thing happened to ship after ship. The human vessels moved through the Orthani formation like dancers, each one targeting specific systems with perfect accuracy. They disabled weapons. They killed engines. They shut down shields. But they did not damage life support. They did not breach holes. They did not kill anyone. The engagement lasted for minutes. When it ended, 12 Orthani warships were drifting helplessly in space. Their crews were alive but stranded. The 3 remaining ships that still had functional engines were Vesh's flagship and 2 destroyers that had been slower to lock weapons. The human fleet pulled back to their original positions. Then, one by one, they turned and accelerated back into the nebula. Within seconds, they vanished completely from sensors. No exhaust trail. No residual energy. Nothing to track or follow. They were simply gone. Vesh sat in his darkened command center, emergency lighting casting red shadows across his face. His hands shook slightly. In 3 decades of military service, he had never seen anything like this. An enemy that moved faster than possible. Weapons that disabled without destroying. Tactics that seemed to predict every move his fleet made. Send a priority message to command, he said quietly. Tell them we encountered an unknown hostile force. Tell them we engaged and were defeated. Tell them the ships matched no known configuration, but the message they sent leaves no doubt who they were. Commander, his communication officer said, her voice uncertain. Command will not believe this. They will think we panicked. That we failed through poor leadership. Send it anyway. And send this as well. Warn all border stations that humanity has returned, and they are not the primitive species we thought them to be. The message took 6 hours to reach Orthani High Command. When it arrived, the senior officers held an emergency meeting. Half of them dismissed the report as combat hysteria or equipment malfunction. Commander Vesh was a proven officer, but the claims seemed impossible. Ships that moved without visible propulsion? Weapons that disabled but did not kill? A fleet defeated in 4 minutes without a single casualty? It sounded like fantasy. They authorized an investigation team to examine Vesh's ships and interview his crew. The team would take 3 weeks to arrive at the nebula. Before they could get there, more reports came in. Station Delta 4 on the other side of Orthani's space went silent. Then Station Gamma 9. Then Listening Post Outpost Zeta 12. Each one followed the same pattern. No damage. No casualties. No crew. Just empty stations and that same repeating message. A timestamp and coordinates pointing to the council chambers. Within 2 weeks, 17 Orthane military installations had been rendered useless. The investigators finally reached Vesh's flagship and confirmed his story. Every detail matched. The damage patterns on disabled ships showed precision that seemed almost surgical. Whatever had hit them targeted specific systems without harming anything else. High Command could no longer dismiss the reports. They sent emergency messages to the Galactic Council describing the attacks and requesting assistance. The Council received the messages with confusion and disbelief. The Valkyrie offered sympathy, but suggested the Orthani were experiencing internal rebellions. The Dominion Collective recommended improved security measures. None of them took the threat seriously. Humanity had been gone for 6 months, silent and forgotten. The idea that humans could be responsible seemed absurd. Humans did not have technology this advanced. Humans did not have ships that could defeat Orthani fleets. Humans were children playing with fire, barely capable of basic space travel. Then the Valkyrie started losing stations. 3 mining operations in the outer territories went silent in a single day. Then a trade hub. Then a military depot. Each time, the same pattern. No casualties. No destruction. Just silence and absence, and that message about the council vote, in space dock above Earth. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of his ship and read the latest intelligence reports. His vessel was one of 36 new destroyers built in complete secrecy over the past 2 years. They used technology that humanity had developed but kept hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. How many targets remain? He asked his executive officer. 43, sir. The Orthani have pulled back most of their border forces, but they still maintain major installations in contested regions. The Valkyrie have increased patrols, but they are looking in the wrong places. Junho nodded slowly. He was a quiet man who had spent most of his career in strategic planning. He did not enjoy combat. He did not relish this campaign, but he understood its necessity. The Council had treated humanity with contempt. They had laughed at Earth's representatives. They had dismissed human potential as primitive foolishness. 2 months after the first attacks, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike anything in its 12,000-year history. 147 installations across 4 different species territories had been disabled. Trading posts stood empty. Military stations drifted silent. Colonial outposts showed no signs of life, and still not a single person had died. That fact terrified the Council more than any amount of destruction would have. An enemy that killed could be understood. An enemy that destroyed could be fought with conventional weapons and tactics. But an enemy that struck with surgical precision disabled everything and vanished without casualties. That was something entirely different in the intelligence division of the Valkyrie Defense Command. An analyst named Soyen studied the patterns. She was not Valkyrie herself, but had been hired years ago as a specialist in primitive species development. Her particular focus had been humanity, a topic she found academically fascinating. She had spent months studying human history, trying to understand how such a violent species had managed to unite and reach the stars. Now, looking at the data from the attacks, she finally understood. Humans had not stopped being violent. They had simply learned to control their violence with terrifying precision. "Look at this," she said to her supervisor, pulling up a star map with all the attacked locations marked in red. Every single target voted in favor of expelling humanity from the Council. Every single one either supported the measure or profited from seizing human assets in contested regions. Her supervisor, a crystalline Valkyrie named Dreth, studied the map carefully. "That cannot be coincidence." "It is not. Watch this." Soyan activated another overlay, showing trade routes and resource extraction operations. These 17 stations here? They were the ones that moved into human mining claims immediately after the expulsion. These 23 installations? They housed the military forces that threatened human colonies. These 41 trading posts? They blacklisted human merchants and took over their contracts. Dreth made a sound like grinding glass, the Valkyrie expression of deep concern. They remember. They remember everything. More than that, Soyan continued. They planned this. Look at the timeline. They withdrew all their people first. Then they went completely silent for 4 months. Then they struck, but only at specific targets. This is not random violence. This is not rage. This is calculated retribution, executed with perfect precision. Can we stop them? Soyan pulled up footage from the few engagements where Council forces had managed to record the human ships. The video showed vessels moving in ways that should be impossible. Weapons that disabled systems without leaving conventional energy signatures. Tactics that seemed to predict every defensive measure. "I do not think we can," she said quietly. "Not with conventional forces. They have technology we did not know existed. They prepared for this. While we laughed at them in the council chambers, they went home and got ready for war." Dreth watched the video 3 times, his crystalline body dimming slightly as he processed the implications. "I need to present this to the emergency committee. They need to understand what we are facing." The emergency committee met that same day in a secure location. Soyan presented her findings to representatives from 15 major species. She showed the maps. She explained the pattern. She played the recordings of human ships in action. When she finished, the room fell silent. Chancellor Vex, who had been so confident when rejecting humanity's application, looked older somehow. His energy field flickered weakly. "How many casualties?" he asked. "None," Soyan replied. "That is the most disturbing part. In 147 attacks, humanity has not killed a single individual. They disable. They take prisoners who are later released unharmed. They empty stations without violence. But they make those stations completely useless." "Why?" asked an Orthani general. "If they can strike with such precision, why not kill? Why show mercy?" Soyan pulled up a file of human history, because they are sending a message. In human military doctrine, there is a concept called escalation dominance. You demonstrate that you can hurt the enemy far worse than they can hurt you. But you deliberately hold back. You show them that you choose not to destroy them, not because you cannot, but because you are better than that. "That is psychological warfare," the Orthani general said. "Yes, and it is working. Your forces are retreating from border regions. The Valkyrie have abandoned 3 entire sectors. The Dominion Collective has recalled their fleets to defend core worlds, all because humanity has shown they can strike anywhere and we cannot stop them. But they also show restraint, which makes us fear what would happen if they stopped restraining themselves." Chancellor Vex stood up slowly. "We need to attempt diplomatic contact. This cannot continue." "We have tried," another delegate responded. "All channels to Earth receive only automated responses." The same message repeated endlessly. "Humanity has withdrawn as requested. Further communication is unnecessary. They will not talk to us." Meanwhile, in orbit, above the Valkyrie colony world of Thres, Captain Hyjin commanded a defense squadron tasked with protecting a critical weapons manufacturing platform. Her fleet consisted of 28 advanced cruisers, the finest ships in the Valkyrie military. They maintained constant patrols, sensors running at maximum range. weapons ready to fire at the first sign of attack. The attack came at dawn, local time. 3 human ships appeared from behind the colony's largest moon, moving at impossible speeds. Hyjin had less than 6 seconds to react. All ships, combat formation. Target the lead vessel. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. The result of centuries of military tradition and training, the human ships did not slow down. They accelerated directly toward the weapons platform, making no attempt to dodge or evade. It seemed like suicide. Hyjin's fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma charges, all converging on the 3 small ships. Nothing hit. The weapons simply missed. Not because the humans had shields, but because the ships moved in ways that made targeting impossible. They shifted position between the moment the targeting computer locked and the moment the weapons fired. The time difference was measured in milliseconds, but it was enough. The 3 human ships reached the weapons platform. In a coordinated strike that lasted exactly 8 seconds, they fired something that Hyjin's sensors could barely register. The platform went dark. Every system shut down. The structure remained intact, but it was completely useless. Then the human ships turned toward Hyjin's fleet. She ordered her ships to scatter. Using evasive tactics that had worked against every enemy the Valkyrie had faced in the past 1,000 years, the tactics failed completely. The human ships moved through her formation like they knew exactly where each vessel would go before the pilots themselves made the decision, one by one. Hyjin's cruisers went dark. Engines died. Weapons failed. Communication systems shut off. Her crew sat at their stations in emergency lighting, alive but helpless. Through her viewport, she watched the 3 human ships regroup near the disabled platform. They held position there for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for every sensor in the system to get a clear reading. Long enough for everyone to understand that this was a demonstration of capability, not just a tactical victory. Then they turned and headed toward the outer system. Hyjin's sensors tracked them until they reached the asteroid field at the system's edge. There, they simply vanished. One moment they were visible, the next moment they were gone. No faster than light jump. No exhaust trail. Nothing to track. They had disappeared as completely as if they had never existed. Rescue ships arrived 6 hours later to tow Hyjin's fleet back to port. She sat in her darkened command center, running the engagement through her mind over and over. She had trained her entire life for combat. She had studied the tactics of every major military force in the galaxy. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "what do we tell command?" Hyjin looked at the disabled weapons platform at her fleet of helpless warships. At the empty space where the human ships had been, "Tell them the truth. That we engaged an enemy who is so far ahead of us that we might as well be throwing rocks. Tell them that humanity is not the primitive species we thought. Tell them we need to find a way to make peace, because we cannot win this war." The report reached Valkyrie High Command within hours. It matched reports from the Orthani, from the Dominion Collective, from every species that had encountered human forces. The pattern was clear and undeniable. Humanity could strike anywhere. They could defeat any force sent against them. And they did it all without killing anyone, which made the psychological impact far worse than any massacre would have. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in its history, the ancient assembly faced a threat it could not understand or counter. Trade throughout the contested regions had collapsed. Military forces refused to patrol areas where humans might appear. The economy contracted as species pulled back to defend their core territories. Chancellor Vex stood before the assembly, looking diminished somehow. "We must attempt contact with Earth. We must offer negotiations, compromise, anything to end this." 3 months into what would later be called the Great Silence, the Galactic Council stood on the edge of collapse. The economy had contracted by 37%. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years lay abandoned. Military forces refused to patrol regions where human ships might appear. Species that had cooperated for millennia now argued over who should face the human threat. Alone, fear spread faster than any disease. Captains abandoned their ships rather than risk encountering the silent human vessels. Colonists demanded evacuation from border worlds. Insurance companies refused to cover cargo in contested space. The careful structure that the Council had built over 12,000 years was falling apart, and they had no idea how to stop it. Then something unexpected happened. A message appeared on every major communication network across Council space. It came from Keshra Station, the neutral trading hub where species from across the galaxy met to do business. The message was simple. To the Galactic Council and all member species, I am Dr. Bora, human xenopsychologist. I have remained on Keshra Station to serve as a bridge between humanity and the galaxy. I offer my perspective on what you call the Great Silence. The message included a longer document that spread rapidly across every network. Council representatives read it with growing understanding and shame. Bora explained what they had never bothered to learn about humanity. She wrote about Earth's 10,000 years of warfare, the millions who died before humans finally learned to work together. She described the nuclear weapons that nearly destroyed the world, the environmental collapse that almost ended civilization, the century of struggle before humanity finally united. You assumed our silence was submission, she wrote. You thought our restraint meant we were weak? You never asked the most important question. Why would a species capable of destroying their own world 20 times over choose instead to unite, to explore, to reach outward in peace? You never wondered what happens when a species that chose peace is finally forced to remember war. She explained the pattern of attacks, making clear what Soyin had discovered. Every target had participated in humanity's expulsion or profited from it. Every strike was precise, measured, designed to disable without killing. Every action was calculated to make one point. Humanity was not weak, but chose mercy. Not because they could not destroy, but because they were better than that. You mistake our nature, Bora concluded. You see patience and think it is fear. You see restraint and think it is inability. But consider this. Every other species you have encountered fights with rage or pride or territorial instinct. Humanity fights with mathematics, with planning, with the cold calculation that comes from surviving 10,000 years of war against ourselves. We do not fight because we are angry. We fight because we have determined it is necessary. And that should terrify you far more than any rage ever could. The message ended with a simple statement. If the Council wishes to negotiate, humanity will listen. But you will negotiate as equals, not as masters, speaking to children. You will offer genuine respect, not conditional tolerance. You will understand that silence is not submission. This is your only chance. Choose wisely. The Council held an emergency vote within hours. The result was unanimous for the first time since humanity's expulsion. Authorize formal diplomatic contact with Earth on whatever terms humanity required. Not to offer membership as a gift. Not to extend conditional acceptance. But to negotiate as equals. Chancellor Vex, who had mocked humanity so confidently 6 months earlier, volunteered to lead the delegation personally. It was a remarkable gesture. For a chancellor to leave the council chambers showed either extreme desperation or genuine humility. Perhaps it was both. The delegation included representatives from every major species. They sent 16 separate requests for a meeting, each more carefully worded than the last. Each one went unanswered for days. Finally, on the 17th request, a response came from Earth. Ambassador Deho will receive you in Geneva. Come in peace. Come with respect. Come ready to rebuild what your pride destroyed.
Oh.
The delegation arrived at Earth 3 weeks later. They traveled through a sol system with growing wonder. Human ships moved everywhere, using technology that no sensors fully understood. Orbital stations surrounded Earth in numbers that suggested construction on a massive scale. Mars showed signs of extensive terraforming. The moons of Jupiter hosted industrial facilities that could produce entire fleets. They built all this in 6 months. Ambassador Thren asked, his crystalline body reflecting the light from Earth's sun. No, Soyin replied quietly. She had been invited to join the delegation as an expert on humanity. They built this over decades. They just hid it from us. While we laughed at their primitive technology, they were developing things we did not think possible. While we dismissed their potential, they were preparing for the day when words would fail and action would be necessary. The delegation landed in Geneva and was escorted to a simple building overlooking a lake. No grand halls, no impressive architecture. Just a quiet office where Ambassador Deho waited with Admiral Taiwan and several other humans whose roles were not immediately. Clear Deho greeted them politely and gestured to seats around a conference table. "Thank you for coming. I assume you are here to discuss terms?" Chancellor Vex sat down carefully, his energy field dimmed to show respect. "Ambassador Deho, we come to acknowledge our error. We judged your species too quickly and too harshly. We dismissed capabilities we should have respected. We offer our apologies and hope to establish better relations." Deho's expression did not change. "Apologies are words, Chancellor. I have heard many words in my career. The Council spoke words when they rejected humanity. They laughed words when they dismissed our achievements. They threatened words when they expelled us from contested space. Words are easy. What I need to know is whether the Council understands why those words led to action." The room fell silent. Finally, Soyen spoke. "You needed to teach us that actions have consequences. That treating a peaceful species with contempt will eventually force that species to demonstrate their true capabilities. You showed mercy not because you are weak, but to prove you are strong enough to choose mercy." Deho looked at her with something that might have been approval. "You understand?" "The question is whether the Council understands," Thren spoke next, his chiming voice subdued. "We understand that we made assumptions based on arrogance rather than facts. We understand that humanity possesses capabilities far beyond what we believed possible. We understand that your restraint in these attacks was a choice, not a limitation. We understand that if you had wanted to destroy us, you could have done so." "Good," Deho said simply. He pulled out a data tablet and placed it on the table. "Then we can discuss terms. But understand this. I do not negotiate for humanity to be granted membership as if it were a privilege. I negotiate for the Council to be restructured so that no species is ever again dismissed the way we were dismissed." He activated the tablet, projecting a document into the air above the table. "This is the Covenant of Keshra. It is named for the station where humans and other species worked together peacefully before politics destroyed that cooperation. The Covenant has one core principle. Any species capable of reaching the stars must be granted full Council membership and voting rights upon request. No mockery. No dismissal. No judgment based on age or origin or appearance." Admiral Taiwan continued the explanation. "The Covenant includes provisions for conflict resolution, mutual defense, and protection of territorial claims. It includes penalties for species that violate these principles. And it includes consequences for those who mistake silence for weakness or patience for inability." Chancellor Vex read through the document carefully. It was fair but firm. It demanded respect for all spacefaring species while maintaining structures for cooperation and security. It was not the work of a primitive culture. It was sophisticated diplomatic architecture that would take years to implement properly. "If we agree to this covenant," Vex asked slowly, "what happens to the current operations? The attacks on our installations?" "They stop immediately," Deho replied. "Humanity has made its point. We do not seek endless war. We seek acknowledgement that we deserve a place at the table. Once that acknowledgement comes in the form of this covenant, signed and implemented, we will withdraw our forces and return to peaceful cooperation. And the stations that were disabled will remain disabled until their parent species agree to the covenant. Once agreement is reached, we will help restore them. We will even share some of the technology we used so that the Council can better defend against actual threats. But that sharing only comes after the covenant is signed." The delegation spent the next 6 hours reviewing every detail of the proposed covenant. They asked questions. They requested clarifications. They negotiated minor points of implementation. Throughout it all, Deho remained patient and calm, willing to compromise on details but firm on principles. Finally, as the sun set over Lake Geneva, Chancellor Vex made a decision. I will recommend that the Council accept this covenant. More than that, I will advocate for it personally. Not because humanity has forced us through military action, but because it is right.